I want you to close your eyes and listen to the sound of a digital clock ticking in a room where the air is slightly too cold. You're sitting at a desk, your palms are damp, and you've just refreshed your bank portal for the 7th time in 10 minutes. The numbers haven't changed. They never change. You've read the books, you've watched the gurus with their white teeth and their rented Lamborghinis, and you've trimmed your expenses until your life tastes like unseasoned rice. But there is a weight in your chest that tells you the game is rigged. It isn't the economy, and it isn't the tax code. It's something much more intimate and infinitely more predatory. I'm talking about the final boss of your financial life, the entity that lives in the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. But here's the terrifying part. You've probably been feeding it.
The trap isn't that you're lazy. The trap is that you're hyperproductive at things that don't matter. I met a man once who spent 4 hours a day optimizing his credit card points to save 3% on a flight he couldn't afford to take. He looked exhausted, his eyes bloodshot from staring at spreadsheets that promised him a freedom he was too tired to enjoy. He was winning the battle, but losing the war, trapped in a cycle of micro-optimizing his way to a slow, comfortable death. Most people are busy building a gilded cage instead of looking for the key to the door. They think the boss is the debt, but the debt is just the boss's fingerprint. The real enemy is the optimization parasite. It's that voice that tells you that if you just find the right app, everything will finally click. But then, the screen goes dark. Think about the last time you felt a genuine surge of financial hope. Maybe it was a new side hustle or a promotion. You felt that electric hum in your veins, the belief that the ceiling was finally cracking. But then, a week later, the hum was gone. Why? Because the final boss doesn't attack your wallet. It attacks your decision fatigue reserve. It waits until you're tired, until you've made 100 small choices about what to eat or which email to answer, and then it strikes. It convinces you that a small, impulsive purchase is a reward for your hard work. It's the $3 coffee that turns into a $30 takeout order because you're too drained to cook. By the time you realize what happened, the boss has already siphoned off your momentum. It's a silent, psychological bleed that leaves you too weak to fight for the big wins. I remember standing in a grocery store aisle, staring at 2 different brands of peanut butter for 5 minutes. One was 30 cents cheaper. I felt like I was being responsible, like I was winning at personal finance. But while I was agonizing over 30 cents, the world was moving on without me. I was trading my high-level cognitive energy for the price of a gumball. This is the boss's favorite trick, making you feel like a genius for saving pennies while you ignore the thousands of dollars leaking out of your life through missed opportunities and sheer exhaustion. It's not about the money you spend. It's about the mental bandwidth you surrender to the mundane. If your brain is a processor, the final boss is the background software that's using 90% of your RAM to run a simulation of being productive. Let's talk about the mirror of the dead self. This is the moment you look at your bank account and realize you've spent 5 years running in place. You aren't poor because you don't have money. You're poor because you've lost the ability to see yourself as someone who should have money. The boss has convinced you that stability is the same thing as safety. But in a world that's moving this fast, stability is just a slow-motion collision. I saw a man whose thumb was twitching in a perfect scrolling motion, even though his phone screen was black. He was addicted to the friction of the struggle. He didn't actually want to defeat the boss because he didn't know who he'd be without the fight. He was more comfortable in the familiar ache of just enough than the terrifying potential of too much. Then I saw his face. The most disturbing realization I ever had wasn't that I was failing, but that I was using the internet to escape the person I'd become while failing. We watch hustle porn to get a hit of dopamine that tricks our brains into thinking we've actually achieved something. It's a phantom victory. We're sitting in our rooms, surrounded by the smell of stale coffee and unwashed laundry, feeling like giants because we watched a video about a billionaire's morning routine. But the boss is laughing. It loves your research phase because research feels like work but carries zero risk.
You can research yourself into a grave. The moment you stop consuming and start producing is the moment the boss finally takes you seriously. And that's when the real psychological warfare begins. It will whisper that you're a fraud, and it will use your own memories as evidence.
Contrast that intensity with the quiet, clinical reality of a neurological scan. When you're in a state of financial scarcity, your IQ literally drops. Your brain stops functioning like a visionary and starts functioning like a cornered animal. You can't think about a 5-year plan when your amygdala is screaming about a 5-day deadline. The final boss isn't a person or a system. It's a biological state of being. It's the cortisol flooding your system, making you impulsive, irritable, and short-sighted. You aren't making bad decisions because you're stupid. You're making them because your brain is on fire. You think you're fighting for your bank account, but you're actually fighting for your nervous system. I watched a woman break down over a broken dishwasher, not because of the appliance, but because it was the one variable she couldn't control in a life held together by duct tape.
But here is where the story shifts. I didn't miss the internet when I went off the grid for a week. I realized I was using the internet to hide from the silence of my own mediocrity. The final boss hides in that silence. It's the comfort trap. We've been conditioned to believe that discomfort is a sign that something is wrong, when in reality, discomfort is the only evidence that you're actually moving. The boss wants you to be comfortable. It wants you to have a warm bed, a fast connection, and a steady stream of distractions. A comfortable man is a harmless man. A man who is slightly cold, slightly hungry, and deeply dissatisfied is a threat to the status quo. The moment I started intentionally seeking out the things that made my skin crawl was the moment my net worth began to move. But then I saw the cost.
The cost isn't just time. It's the erosion of your relationships. When you're locked in a room with the final boss, everyone else becomes a distraction. You start to see people as liabilities or assets rather than human beings. You lose the ability to hear the hiss of the espresso machine or the sound of your own breath because you're too busy calculating the ROI of a conversation. This is the ultimate victory for the boss. It turns you into a machine that generates wealth but has no capacity to consume it. I met a millionaire who could tell you the exact price of every stock in his portfolio, but couldn't tell you his daughter's favorite color. He had defeated the boss, but the boss had taken his soul as a trophy. He was the most successful ghost I'd ever met.
It's time to look at the shock turn. You think the final boss is keeping you poor to benefit the system. You think the banks and the governments want you broke so you'll keep working. But that's too simple. The truth is much more haunting. The system doesn't want you poor. It wants you indebted. It wants you to have just enough to keep going, but not enough to ever stop. It wants you in a perpetual state of almost successful, almost free, almost happy. The final boss is the feeling of almost. It's the carrot on the stick that's designed to be exactly 1 inch out of reach forever. I realized that I wasn't fighting to get to the carrot. I was fighting to realize that I didn't even like carrots. I was chasing someone else's definition of a win.
If you want to kill the boss, you have to stop playing the game by the rules you were taught in high school. The rules of hard work and patience are for people who want to die with a modest pension and a lot of regrets. The people who actually win are the ones who realize that the boss is a hallucination. It's a collection of fears and societal expectations that have been layered over your brain like a shroud. I saw a man quit his high-paying job to start a business that everyone said would fail. He looked terrified, but for the first time in his life, he looked awake. He wasn't avoiding the boss. He was walking through it. And on the other side, there was no treasure chest. There was just more work, but it was work that belonged to him.
We are reaching the end of the script, and you're probably waiting for the 5 steps or the secret formula to escape the matrix. You want me to tell you to buy a course or wake up at 4 a.m., but I won't do that. Because any solution I give you becomes a tool for the final boss to keep you distracted. The only way out is to sit in the cold room, in the silence, and realize that you are the one who built the boss. You gave it its power. You gave it your time. You gave it your fear. Every time you chose the easy path, you added another layer of armor to the enemy. The boss is just a mirror, reflecting your own refusal to be truly, dangerously responsible for your existence. The reflection is staring back at you right now.
The light on your screen is beginning to feel heavy. You've listened to these words, and for a moment you feel like you understand. You feel like something has changed. But as soon as this audio ends, the boss will be waiting in the kitchen. It will be in the notification on your phone. It will be in the sigh you let out when you look at the time. There is no epic music playing. There is no slow motion walk toward the sunset. There is just you, the room, and the realization that the final boss isn't going to die. You just have to decide if you're going to keep feeding it your life, or if you're finally going to let it starve in the dark. The silence after this is the most important part of your day. Don't fill it. Just sit there and feel the weight of what you've wasted. Then, don't do anything at all. Be still. Let it sink in. You are still in the room. The clock is still ticking. The boss is watching you decide.